But Nico Collins got paid yesterday.
He did.
3 years, $72.5 million, can be up to 75. I believe it is. I haven't seen an official. If this doesn't wipe out the last year, I haven't seen that official yet. But it seems like it's basically a 4-year contract now, where he's going to make $3 million this year, $24 million roughly the next 3 years. At this very moment, it would put him as the 7th highest paid wide receiver in football. Deserving?
Well, statistically, hate this all you want, he was a top 10 wide receiver last year. 8th in yards in 15 games. Everyone ahead of him played 16 games or more. 7th in yards per game. 7th in yards per catch. Did you know Noah Brown, ironically, was 4th in the NFL in yards per catch? But, he's not good enough to be your number 3 wide receiver. Whatever, you got Stephon Diggs. Fine. Fantasy football lovers. He's in a 4-way tie for 4th in 20-plus yard receiving plays.
Pretty good.
He's 9th in total yards after the catch in just 15 games. 7th in yards after the catch per reception. In a 10-way tie for 8th in touchdown receptions with 8th. The only thing that I guess you could look at and say, well, he's not top 10 here, is catch percentage. He's 16th with a 73.39 catch percentage on passes thrown his way. It might be a 1-year thing, but given this guy was clearly held back by Davis Mills his first 2 seasons, given the fact that he is 6'4", can run past entire defenses, can catch the football and make moves to get around defenders or just run through them, I think he is worth this contract. And honestly, it is a bargain for a wide receiver that has those skills and that is statistically one of the top 10 receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's where they clearly believe it's not a 1-year thing. That this contract is going to last the duration of CJ Stroud's rookie contract, and they believe that this is who Nico Collins is. Of the receivers that are making more than him this year, 3 of them got contracts this offseason. Devonta Smith, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and A.J. Brown. If your issue with the contract is that he is now a top 7 paid wide receiver, well, here's the thing. He's not. He's making $3 million this year, and he will never be a top 10 paid wide receiver. Ever.
Because lots of other contracts are going to get
Jamar
signed.
Chase is about to get paid. Justin Jefferson's about to get paid. T. Higgins is about to get paid. Brandon Ayuk is about to get paid. So I would rather give him this deal now and say, hey, we believe in you. We believe in you long term. And we don't want to see you do this again and have to give you $30 million. Because when Jefferson and Chase next offseason are getting $33 million, all that does to Nico's base of his contract is make it rise. Mm-hmm. So I'm totally good with this deal right now. I believe in Nico Collins. You don't have a year like that and then it's just not real.
I did not believe in him going into last year.
Agreed.
Because I generally think that a wide receiver makes the biggest jump in his career from year 1 to year 2. But he was so good last year, and those traits that really shined, which is why Nick Caserio took him in the 3rd round, despite playing for a Jim Harbaugh Michigan team, which isn't doing this kind of things that CJ Stroud can do with him, where first play of a game against the Colts, you can throw a 70-plus yard touchdown pass to him. Go shock and awe on the team because of his size and his speed. Speed that is not easy to find for any player in the league, let alone a guy who is, again, 6'4" and huge and runs after the catch like he is a tight end. So I like this deal. It's a bargain. And Joe, it might have been a deal that he was willing to sign because he's pretty happy playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I think there's a little CJ Stroud discount here. As instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to play out this season and then bet on myself, I really like where I'm at right now. I'm going to sign the extension because I want to continue to work with CJ Stroud. I've seen what it's like to play for teams with bad quarterbacks. No offense to Davis Mills and Mills Mafia.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Nico Collins looks like this year because people are going to look at his stats at the end of the season, and there's going to be people in the media and on social media that are going to try to push this narrative that the Nico Collins contract is bad because statistically he's going to be worse this year.
Who said that?
No one yet.
No one yet?
But it's going to happen because he's not going to have the same numbers he did last year, most likely. Because you have Stephon Diggs, you have Tank Dell. Like, he's going to be very good, but the fantasy football numbers are not going to probably be there in the same capacity that they were this year. The other part that's important about this is that you only had Tank Dell under contract going into 2025. that was a good wide receiver at least. Like you needed to address that position going forward. Noah Brown's on another 1-year deal. Diggs is obviously only going to be here for 1 year. Those are your other top wide receivers. Robert Woods probably won't even be on the team week 1 this year. So you're going to go into 2025 with nothing at wide receiver besides like Tank Dell and Xavier Hutchinson, and I think Mechie still might be under. I think he's still under contract in 2025. Like you needed to address the position for the long term as well. So I love the deal. I think he's a great player. I think it's a great player, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do with him with CJ going forward. Because as much as I like Tank Dell, Nico to me looks like a number 1 guy. Like he looks like a guy that in a big moment, no matter what, because of his size, his speed, his ability to get open, you can count on Nico Collins after just 1 year. It looks like 1 big year to count on when you need him most.
He did pretty well in a couple of games without Tank Dell and with also some of the other injuries that they had at wide receiver where, there wasn't Noah Brown for some of those games at the very end of the year. I mean, that game against the Colts, he was awesome. He single-handedly was their offense. Take a look at the production. They couldn't run the ball in that game very well, and it was really all passes thrown to Nico Collins. Indianapolis kept C.J. Stroud and company at bay for the most part. The idea of wide receiver 1 is a weird one. It sort of lends itself to barbershop conversations where people just start yelling at each other, and it's entirely subjective. But statistically, he's a top 10 wide receiver, and this is something you need to keep reminding yourself because look at the stats. It's not just 1 or 2 or 3. It's like 6 to 8 different categories where he's towards the top of the league. So it makes sense for him to get paid based off of this past year and based off the fact that he's young, like one of the top 10 guys in the league. And to what you were saying too, this is not something that's going to hurt you because the next couple of years of his contract, they don't ultimately hurt you in a CJ Stroud future contract. When Collins' contract expires, and he might not even play all the way through this contract, that's when CJ Stroud's contract expires, and that's when you're going to give him the big deal. I do think it's interesting, a couple of things just from the Houston Texans, how they do things perspective. They love to give deals to guys early. We saw that with Joe Mixon right after they traded for him. We saw that with Shaq Mason right after they traded for him. And he also does not like to give contracts that are longer than 3 years.
Good.
It honestly is smart. It's semantics these days in the NFL. Generally, a 4-year deal is a 2-year deal. It's all about the guaranteed money. But this is just how the Houston Texans do business, whether it's right or wrong. I think you can push back on maybe the idea of giving everybody a contract early. I suppose you could make the same case for Titus Howard or something like that.
Like Titus Howard would be the one that of the contracts that were quickly given out between Mixon. I mean, obviously we haven't seen Mixon play out yet. Shaq Mason was pretty damn good his first year. Laramie's second contract, you gave him a little bit earlier than you needed to, and that was another 3-year deal. 3 years, 75 for Tunsil. Titus, you can push back if you wanted to about his contract because it's not great. There's a reason. Part of the reason why we have to keep addressing everyone in the NFL like media community that thinks he's going to be a left guard again. There's a reason behind that because he hasn't lived up to his contract up to this point. He's not on the field enough for that contract. So yeah, I mean, you're not going to hit a home run every time. Like I like this strategy. Pay your guys.
But don't hamstring yourself with the contracts that you give out. Don't put yourself in a spot where you're going to have to cut guys because you're signing one player. And ultimately, I mean, it made more sense to give an extension to Nico Collins than it did to keep Stephon Diggs on a multi-year deal. Made way more sense. We don't know that Stephon Diggs is going to be the same player here. We hope that he will be. He had a nice first half of the year in Buffalo, but down the stretch, when Buffalo stopped forcing the football to him as much as they do, the Bills started winning football games.
Yeah, it'll be... We'll see what happens, but this is going to be a fascinating season for the Houston Texans. And I do imagine this is the end. This is your final piece of paper that you're signing, that Stephon Diggs is only here for a year, this contract. Do you believe that this leads to that?
Well, it really depends on how this year goes. I mean, I think there's a world where perhaps CJ Stroud convinces him to perhaps stick around for another year or a couple of years for not that much money. Is a deal going to come to Stephon Diggs guaranteed from another team after this season, a big one, the one that he's looking for, I think you have to look at the second half of the year and wonder about that. And take a look at guys like Odell Beckham Jr., who we once used to pump the tires up. Now, I mean, it's been a really long time since Odell Beckham Jr. was Odell Beckham Jr., but similar star profile as far as NFL wide receivers. That's where Stephon Diggs was. He used to be a top 3 receiver in the league. Now you're not so sure. So this is one of those moves, though, that you do because you want to reward some of the guys on your roster. Not that you necessarily need to anymore to keep people around, right? You have CJ Stroud and you have Nico Collins. I think people want to stay around, and I think you got a little bit of a discount because of that. But I do like this move, and I would imagine that they're probably, Joe, done with extensions before the start of this year.
I would think so too. Yeah, I would imagine they're done at this point. This is pretty much the end of the offseason. Maybe another corner, but for the most part, this is the Texans' offseason has come to a close.